Dad, by the time you hear this, I'll already be gone. Not receive some. Those words split the night in two. The phone pressed against my ear, my chest tightening with every syllable. Gone. Where could my only daughter be going in the middle of the night? Lucas and I are flying to Reno. We're getting married tomorrow. I sold the condo. I sold the car. We need the money to start fresh. The men guys fa. How do you answer a knife twisting in your own heart? I stared at the ceiling in the darkness of my bedroom, searching for air. The condo, my wife and I had bought it before she died. A promise to our girl that she would always have a safe place to land. The car, I had handed her the keys at graduation. Proud tears running down my face. And now, with one call, she had stripped it all away. Clara. My voice broke. Barely a whisper. What are you saying to me? After everything, how could you? On the other end, her tone was cold. Rehearsed. Lucas says I've lived under your shadow for too long. I need to make my own choices. Don't try to stop me. In Cass. The room seemed to spin. I gripped the edge of the nightstand. The ticking of the hallway clock roaring in my ears. Was this the same daughter who once begged me never to let go of her hand? Or was she already someone else's creation? The line went silent. My heart thundered. Not from illness, but from betrayal deeper than blood. And in that silence, a single thought echoed louder than all the pain. If the woman I raised could walk away so easily, what else had already been stolen from me? I did not sleep after that call. I lay in the dark and let the past return. One room at a time. The first room was a kitchen with a cracked floor, a radio whispering baseball, and a little girl in purple pajamas sitting on the counter with flour on her nose. She was 5 and stubborn and bright. She pointed at the bowl and said, "More sugar, please," like it was a spell. I made pancakes shaped like stars. She clapped when the first one landed on her plate. Syrup ran down her chin. I wiped it with patient hands. I only learned after she was born. We lived on the east side of Cleveland in a small house that smelled like coffee. I ran a small hardware store near the lake. Winter pushed through our coats and made my knuckles stiff. I opened the shop at dawn. Maya held our daughter close and drew a heart in the fog with her finger. I pressed my palm to the glass and pretended I could warm them from the sidewalk. On Fridays, I closed early. We drove to the ice rink, and my girl tried to skate like the older kids. She fell a lot. I fell more. She laughed and told me to get up. I promised I would never leave the ice until she did. When Maya got sick, the house learned a new silence. Pill bottles on the counter and fresh flowers that I bought to make the rooms smell like life. I kept the store running, but every hour I wanted to be home. Our daughter was 12 and proud. She cooked simple meals with me and carried a plate to the bedroom and asked how was today. Maya often said better than yesterday. Some nights we believed her. We held on almost 2 years. Clinics. Good news in small pieces. Bad news in steady rain. On the last afternoon, snow fell in quiet flakes. Our girl took Maya's hand and told her about a dance at school and a song she liked. Maya smiled and looked at me. Keep our girl safe. Teach her to change a tire. Then she rested. The house made a sound I had never heard. It kept echoing long after the door closed behind the nurses. We adjusted because there was no other choice. I learned to braid hair badly. I burned grilled cheese until I found the right heat. I kept the store and took extra jobs fixing steps and doors. I saved dollars in a coffee tin because it felt safe. I promised I would not miss the big days. I showed up for science fairs and band concerts with a tie that never sat straight. I brought lilies to the gym because Maya loved lilies. The coach rolled his eyes and then asked for a discount on screws. My girl laughed and said maybe. She grew into someone who made other people softer. She tutored kids who fell behind and painted a mural at the rec center. When college letters arrived, we lined them on the table and held hands before we opened them. She chose a state school near home. I kept the shop open late to pay for books. She worked weekends with me and learned how to talk to men who came in asking for nails and left wanting advice. The condo came later when the store did better. 1 bedroom and a small balcony and a view of brick that made the sun brief and shy. But it was safe. New locks. A kitchen she could claim. We signed papers at a folding table in a borrowed office. She cried anyway. I told her a home is a promise you make to your future self. She tucked the keys into her pocket like a secret. We built small traditions. Sunday soup at my place. Movie night on the second Tuesday. A call after dinner each day. She would say, "Hi Dad, I am fine." I would say, "Hi kid, I am proud." We pretended nothing could break what we had. There were road trips. A blue sedan with a stubborn engine, a cooler with sandwiches. We stood on a cold beach and let the water numb our ankles. She picked stones and said, "Choose one, and keep it in your pocket when you need courage." I have mine. It sits by the sink where I can touch it each morning. People say time heals. It taught us to carry pain without letting it crush our ribs. It gave me room to imagine a future where she would build a life and I would stand in the back row at her wedding and cry. That was the picture I held when I could not sleep. After the call, I found one of her old notes under a magnet on the freezer. She had written it in thick marker when she was little. "Do not forget milk and hug." I pressed it flat with my palm and said the word hug to an empty room as if I could call it back. Then I folded the note and put it in my wallet. I stood in the quiet and made a promise to the woman I loved and to the girl we raised. I would not break. I would keep our girl safe, even if she did not want me to. Looking back, the first crack was almost invisible. Clara stopped wearing the river stone in her jacket, the one we picked on the cold beach. She used to tap it before interviews. One Tuesday in March, she came by the store without it. I reached for her coat and felt only lining. She pulled away and said she didn't need charms anymore. People grow up. Dad. She began arriving late to soup night. Then she skipped it. The first time she texted a photo of takeout and wrote "crazy day at work." The second time, no photo. Just a short message. "With friends. Be home late." I told myself this was normal. It did not feel normal. Money shifted in quiet ways. She kept envelopes on her table. Rent. Utilities. Savings. In April, a new envelope appeared. Opportunity. I asked what it was. She said a project. What kind? You wouldn't get it. Dad. It sounded rehearsed. Her voice changed. Still Clara, but smoother. Like she had sanded off the parts that asked for help. We met for coffee near the park. She ordered something I could not pronounce. When I offered to pay, she stopped my hand. "Lucas says I need to stand on my own." "Who is Lucas?" "A friend," she said, and changed the subject. I first saw him from a distance. He waited by her condo door wearing a perfect coat and shoes too clean for our street. He looked into the glass to fix his hair. When Clara came out, he kissed her cheek and said something that made her laugh too hard. I felt like a stranger to my own front steps. At the store, I kept a notebook for orders. I also started a second one. It was for questions I didn't know how to ask. Why did she put a lock on the bedroom door inside her condo? Why did she change her phone passcode twice in a month? Why did she flinch when I said your mother's name? None of these are things you ask without breaking something. I said I missed the rink. She said her skates were in the closet. I said we should go. She said maybe. Then said Lucas did not like cold places. Since when did cold stop us? The laugh I tried never came. There were new clothes. A dress with a price tag still dangling. A watch that looked expensive. Then vanished. A lipstick that was not her color. I asked once if she was happy. She said she was excited. Happy is for people who are done growing. Dad, one night I heard a car and saw her walking to a black sedan. Lucas leaned across the console and opened the door. She looked back at the building like she was leaving the old version of herself on the sidewalk. I wanted to call her name. In May, an envelope arrived at my house with her name on it. I called and said she had mail. She told me to leave it on the porch. I said I could drop it off. Not tonight. I asked if everything was all right, better than ever. She said, in a voice that shone like metal. We still had bright days. A Saturday in June when we fixed a wobbly table, and she laughed when I dropped a screw. A Sunday when she brought peaches and we ate them over the sink. For a minute I forgot the distance. Then her phone buzzed. She read the screen and her face closed. She left early. I met Lucas at a street fair in July. He shook my hand and told me my grip was strong for a man my age. He told Clara he liked the blue dress, but not the shoes. He asked what my shop's profit was like. I was a case study. When I said it kept the lights on, he smiled and said, "We can scale that." He used "we" a lot. He talked about investments that require courage. Banks are for people without vision. He said, "Success is a choice." He put his arm around her shoulders like a claim. She looked at him the way a tired swimmer looks at a rope thrown from a boat. I knew that look. After that day, our calls became shorter. Her sentences clipped off before they reached feeling. When I asked how she slept, she said fine. When I asked if she needed anything, she said no. When I told her I loved her, she said, "Love you." Quick and small, like a password. Late one evening, I went to the condo to drop off a toolbox. I used my key and walked in, calling her name. A stranger's cologne hung in the air. On the counter, 2 glasses. One with a lipstick print that was not hers. In the sink, a spoon dipped in honey. She does not put honey in tea. I set down the toolbox and backed away. The next morning she called early. Her voice was soft and careful. "Dad, I'm thinking about moving." I asked why. "New opportunities." I asked with who. "We." I asked who he was. "Please trust me," she said. Every part of me wanted to say no. Every part of me that remembered Maya's last request told me to breathe and wait. So I waited. I watched the smallest things fail to fit. Keys on a hook that used to be on the table. A photograph angled away from the light. A laugh that stopped 1 second too soon. I wrote each detail in the notebook because there was nothing else I knew how to do. The list grew. The truth stayed quiet. And then the night of the call came. And quiet was over. ChatGPT Danoi. I confronted her on a Sunday afternoon when the heat made the sidewalks shine. I had planned it all morning. Rehearsed the words while tightening bolts in the shop. I told myself to keep my voice calm. To stay the father and not become the judge. But when Clara walked in with Lucas at her side, my chest tightened with something raw. We sat at her condo table. Lucas leaned back. One arm draped across the chair like he owned the air. Clara poured water, avoiding my eyes. I opened my notebook and slid it across. Dates, amounts, questions. She frowned, pushed it back. "Dad, why are you keeping records of me?" I told her because I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid of losing you. Lucas smirked. "You see, Clara, this is what I meant. He cannot let go. He treats you like a client, not a woman." I felt heat rise in my face. "Who are you to tell me how to raise my daughter?" He tilted his head, calm as glass. "The man who loves her enough to give her freedom." Clara's hand trembled as she set down her glass. "Dad, I sold the car. It's done." My stomach dropped. "That was your mother's last gift." She bristled. "It was mine to use." Lucas put his hand over hers. She's not a child anymore. She doesn't need your permission. The words landed like blows. I tried to reason. I reminded her of Sunday soup, of the stone in her pocket, of Maya's voice. She stared at me with eyes wet but hard. Stop living in the past. This is my life now. Lucas whispered something to her, and she nodded like she was reciting a vow. The room spun. I gripped the table. You sold more, didn't you? Her silence told me enough. The condo. My chest ached. You had no right. She stood. I have every right. I am 26 years old. I choose my path. And you cannot stop me. The words broke something between us. Lucas stood too, smiling thin. He thanked me for the hospitality. As they left, Clara glanced back once. I searched her face for the girl who once begged me not to let go of her hand at the rink. All I saw was distance. That night I walked through my house and touched each frame on the wall. School plays, birthdays, graduations. Each photo asked me the same question. How did we come to this? I sat in the dark and whispered to the silence. I gave everything. I gave all I had. And still, it was not enough. The next day, I tried again. I met her at the cafe near the park. She arrived late. Hair styled sharper than I remembered. A new purse on her shoulder. Lucas waited outside on his phone. I begged her to think, to slow down, to ask who benefits from these choices. She sighed. Lucas says you will never approve. Lucas says you want me trapped. I leaned forward. What do you say? Her lips parted, then closed. She whispered. I don't know anymore. I reached for her hand. She pulled it away. She stood, walked to the door, paused. I heard her voice, small but final. Please don't call me for a while. Then she left with him. My reflection in the cafe window looked like a man already forgotten. At home, the store ledger lay open but numbers blurred. Every sound of the street felt foreign. I sat with the notebook of questions and drew one more line. Has she already chosen him over me? The pen tore through the page. I pressed my palms to my eyes until I saw stars. The confrontation was supposed to bring truth. Instead, it carved a deeper distance. She had defended him, denied me, and declared her independence with his words in her mouth. I had lost the argument, and maybe more. That night the house felt emptier than it had after Maya's last breath. Because then I still had Clara. Now I was not sure at all. I did not open the shop the next morning. I sat at the kitchen table with the note that said, "Do not forget milk and hug." The ink had faded at the edges. My coffee went cold. The clock in the hallway kept time like a small hammer. I waited for a knock that never came. At noon, I took the blue sedan and drove with no address in mind. The radio talked about traffic and a game I did not care about. I turned it off and listened to the engine. It coughed once and settled. The car knew me. My hands knew the wheel. Everything else felt new and hostile. I parked by the rink and walked inside. The air was sharp and clean. A handful of kids moved in circles. Arms out. Mouths open with laughter. I sat on the bench where I used to tie Clara's skates. The wood had the same scratch near the end. I put my hands where her feet once rested and felt the cold through my sleeves. I whispered her name into the empty space between the blades and the ice. A boy fell near me and popped up with a grin. His father cheered. I smiled and waved. The smile did not reach my eyes. I went to the lake. The wind pushed hard enough to make me lean. The water was brown and heavy. I took the small stone from my pocket, the one we picked together. I warmed it in my palm and asked it for help, like a superstitious fool. A woman walking her dog nodded to me. "Are you all right, sir?" I said I was fine. Then I was not. The house was colder than it should have been. I set the bread on the counter and touched the picture frames again. I told Maya I was trying. I told her I might fail. I told her I was tired. I lay on the couch with my jacket still on and stared at the ceiling until the light faded into blue. Sleep did not come. I tried the old tricks. Hot shower. Open window. Tea with too much honey. I recorded a message to Clara on my phone and deleted it. I tried again. I said I love you, and I am here and I will listen. I deleted that one too because fear dressed itself as pride and told me not to beg. Pride was a bad friend. Around 3, I walked through the house in the dark and checked each lock twice. I made a list of things to fix because fixing is what I understand. The back door needs a new hinge. The bathroom fan hums. The porch light flickers. I wrote each item down and then stared at the list as if it could fix me too. In the morning, I went to the store. I turned the sign to open. I stood at the counter and watched dust float on a shaft of light like slow snow. Customers came. I cut lengths of rope. I found the right screws. I made change with hands that did not shake while they were busy. When the door closed behind the last person, I let my forehead fall to the counter and stayed there for a long minute. I whispered, "Please." I did not know who I was asking. By evening, I felt the weight in my chest return. Not the sharp pain that sends you to a hospital. A slow press, like a book on your ribs. I lay on the floor and let it pass. It did. I sat up and decided to call the clinic in the morning. I did not. I told myself I would be fine if I stayed calm and busy and quiet. On the second night, I went to the closet and found the old shoebox with letters. Clara's first thank you to the tooth fairy. A birthday card with a crooked heart. A list of groceries from the year money was tight. Eggs. Rice. Tape for the store. I read them like scripture. I could hear the voices again. I cried in slow breaths, so I would not scare myself. On Monday, I called Clara and reached voicemail. I said, "Clara, it is Dad. I love you. I am here. No lecture. No plan. Just me." I pressed end and placed the phone face down on the counter. I waited with the patience of a man who has glued chair legs and watched them set. The phone stayed silent. Loneliness makes small tasks feel holy. Washing a plate, folding a towel, refilling the salt. I did them all with care. I did them like I was practicing for a life I did not choose but had to learn. I wrote a letter to Clara by hand. I told her about the rink and the lake and the stone. I told her I am not your chain. I am your root. I told her I can learn to let go without letting you fall. I did not send it. I placed it under the coffee tin with the others' things that wait. The hurt did not leave. It softened at the edges and came back when the house was too quiet. I learned to live beside it like a neighbor I did not like but needed to greet. I learned to sit with it without letting it tell me what to do. On the third night, I stood at the window and spoke to Maya in a voice just above a whisper. I said I am scared. I said I do not know the right move. I said I will keep going until our girl comes home or until I fall down trying. The wind tapped the glass and the streetlight flickered. I took that as an answer. When morning came, I shaved, put on a clean shirt, and wrote one sentence on the first page of a fresh notebook. I will not disappear. I closed the cover and slipped the stone into my pocket. Then I turned the sign to open and waited for the next thing I could fix. Morning came like a dare. I shaved, brewed coffee strong enough to bite, and opened the notebook to the page that said, "I will not disappear." I underlined it twice. Then I started calling people. The county recorder answered on the second try. I gave the parcel number of the condo and waited while keyboards clicked. The clerk cleared her throat. "A transfer is in process. Seer. Not yet recorded. There is a deed of trust on file from 2 years ago. Beneficiary listed as your name." I closed my eyes. The small loan for her kitchen remodel. I had recorded it to teach responsibility, then forgot it existed in the noise of our lives. Does that lien block a sale? She said the title company would need a release from me. Without it, no clean transfer. Thank you. I said, and meant it like a prayer. I wrote a letter to the title office and hand-delivered it. I kept my words dry and exact. Lien holder declines to release until verifying borrower consent and payoff figures. The receptionist tried to smile and failed. I left with a stamped copy and a steadier heartbeat. Next, I called Irene Malloy. She used to buy sandpaper from me and tell stories about the cases she worked before retiring from the police. Now, she ran a small investigations firm out of a rented room above a bakery. She met me at a corner booth that smelled like sugar and coffee. She listened without interrupting. Then she opened a leather pad and began in a slow voice that meant business. Full background on the boyfriend. Employment. Aliases. Judgments. Licenses. Known associates. Phones and emails for contact mapping. You willing to hear what you do not want to hear? I nodded. She quoted a fee. I said yes before she finished the sentence. I gave her what I had. Screenshots of texts that sounded coached. Dates of missed dinners. A photo of the black sedan. A napkin with a plate number I had memorized and written down before sleep could erase it. She slid everything into a folder and gave me an hour to breathe. Eat something, she said. Do not pick a fight you cannot win. Pick the one you can. Back home, I turned the dining table into a war room. Manila folders. Pens that still worked. A small stack of receipts for money I had transferred to Clara over the years. I was not trying to build a case against my daughter. I was trying to build a bridge back to her. One truth at a time. I printed county records and highlighted the lien with a ruler to keep my hands steady. I wrote a simple sentence at the top. No release without her face in the room. I called my bank and placed alerts on my accounts. Then suggested Clara set them on hers. She did not answer. I left a message that said, "This is not control. This is a guardrail." I told the banker my voice was calm because panic would only make him talk slower. He laughed and did the work. I walked the shop aisles after closing and talked out loud to the empty space. I rehearsed what I would say to Clara the next time she let me speak to her. I practiced not raising my voice. I practiced ending sentences before they became sermons. I practiced the words, "I am sorry for the places I held too tight. I am sorry for the places I let go too soon. I will stand here until you need me." Irene called that evening. She had a voice made for bad news. Your boyfriend has a trail. Not long enough to scare everyone. Long enough to worry a father. 2 past partnerships that ended with civil disputes. A suspended sales license in Florida. A small claims judgment in Illinois he never satisfied. Social handles under a shortened name. Photos of luxury things that do not match reported income. I asked if any of it was criminal. Not yet, she said. But people fall through gaps. Predators live in gaps. She asked for permission to pull deeper. I gave it. She told me to sleep. I tried. Sleep came like a stray cat, edging closer and bolting at the slightest move. In the morning, I drove to the condo and stood on the sidewalk across from her building. I told myself I would not go in. I needed only to see that the walls still stood. I saw Lucas first. He stepped out, carrying a box and talking into a headset. He laughed without warmth. A delivery truck arrived. He waved it away with a gesture sharp as a blade. A neighbor held the door for him and he did not say thank you. I wrote it down because sometimes the smallest tells are the most honest. Clara emerged minutes later. She wore a coat that did not look like hers. She looked tired and alert at the same time, like someone driving in fog. Lucas touched her elbow and pointed to the street as if he owned the world. She nodded and followed. My hands stayed in my pockets. I counted 3 slow breaths and walked the other way. I would not blow my chance by turning grief into a scene. At lunch, I met an old friend, Owen, who handled small business paperwork at City Hall. He ate half my sandwich while lecturing me about forms. I asked for public filings under Lucas's company name. Owen opened a creaky laptop and whistled. New LLC. No real address. Registered agent is a storefront that closes early on Fridays. No payroll records. No vendor permits. He looked up. If he promises to build something big. He is using words like scaffolding. They look sturdy until a foot slips. I wrote a letter to Clara. Not the one I had already written. A new one made of facts. I told her the sale could not close without me. I told her I would come to any meeting, she asked. At any hour she chose. I told her I would sign a release the minute she looked me in the eye and said it was her wish, not someone else's. I used small words on purpose. I tucked the letter under her front door with a photo of the three of us at the rink. Maya's smile took up half the frame. I set a trap I could live with. I called the title office again and asked for a meeting. They suggested Friday. I said I would bring the original lien and identification. I also asked that any party present be required to show identification. So, signatures could be notarized. The agent said, of course. I hung up and called Irene. She said she would be in the lobby with coffee and eyes open. That night I stood by the sink and pressed the stone against my palm until it left a small mark. Fighting back did not feel like rage. It felt like breathing on purpose. It felt like bringing light to each corner where confusion had been allowed to grow. I spoke aloud to the empty kitchen. I will not shame her. I will not slander him. I will put truth on the table and let it stand. Before bed, I cleared a space on the dining table and laid out 2 chairs. One for me. One for my daughter. I set a glass of water at each place like I was inviting Hope to sit down and stay a while. Friday morning arrived, gray and restless. I dressed like a man going to court. Fresh shirt. Polished shoes. Documents in a folder thick enough to speak before I opened my mouth. I drove downtown with the radio off. Each stoplight another chance to reconsider. But I did not turn back. The title office smelled of ink and copy paper. Irene sat near the lobby window with her notebook closed but her eyes scanning everyone who entered. She gave a slight nod. Lucas and Clara arrived 10 minutes late. He wore a suit too sharp for morning, flashing a watch like it was proof of existence. She walked half a step behind him. Her gaze lowered until she saw me. Then she straightened but did not smile. The agent led us into a glass room. Papers lay in neat stacks. Lucas placed a pen on top like he was impatient for the ink to flow. I opened my folder and spread out documents one by one. The deed of trust. The original lien. The acknowledgement of my signature. I slid them toward the center of the table. This property cannot transfer without my release. Lucas laughed. A sound with no humor. Old paperwork. Easily handled. Clara. Sign here, and we can be done. She reached for the pen. I stopped her with a quiet voice. Read this line. Beneficiary must consent. That means me. She froze. Lucas leaned forward. Eyes sharp. You're holding her hostage with fine print. I kept my tone level. No. I am protecting her from a sale she does not fully understand. The agent cleared her throat and confirmed what I said. Without my release, no legal sale. Clara's hand trembled. I turned to her. This is not control. It is a pause. If you truly want this, I will sign. But I need to hear it from you. Not from him. Her lips parted. Lucas cut in. He doesn't respect you. He will never let you be free. I set another document on the table. Irene's preliminary report. Suspended licenses. Lawsuits. Debts. Clara glanced at it, her face shifting between shock and anger. Lucas snatched the paper and tore it in half. Lies, he said. Fabricated to scare you. Irene finally spoke from the doorway. All public record. I can testify. Lucas stiffened. Clara's voice cracked. Is this true? He put his arm around her shoulder. They twist everything. People envy success. She pulled away slightly. Confusion in her eyes. I gathered the papers calmly. You can choose him. Clara. You can choose anyone, but you cannot say you were not warned. I stood, left the folder on the table, and walked out. Irene followed. On the street, I leaned against a lamp post. My breath. Irene said softly, "You did well. You showed truth without shouting. Now she must sit with it." I nodded, though the ache inside felt like failure. 2 days later, my phone rang. Clara's number. I answered with a voice steady as I could make it. She whispered, "Lucas says you forged those records, that you hired someone to smear him." My chest sank. "Clara, do you remember the beach stone you carried? Did I make that too?" Silence on the line. Then she hung up. That night Irene called again. We dug deeper, she said. More names. More women. Same pattern. Fast romance. Quick money. Sudden exits. Nothing criminal stuck yet. But the trail is long. I asked for proof. She promised copies in the morning. I sat at the kitchen table and touched the note that said hug. I whispered to Maya. I found the truth. But will she see it before it's too late? I asked Clara to meet me at the community center near the lake. The room smelled like floor wax and old coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed. A long table sat in the middle like a stage nobody wanted. I set 2 glasses of water and a folder. I told myself to breathe in 4s and speak in 2s. She arrived with Lucas. He walked in first. Head up. Coat unbuttoned like a man taking possession. Clara followed with her hands in her pockets. She did not look at the water. I stood. Thank you for coming. Lucas smiled like a picture in a brochure. We will not stay long. I opened the folder and slid out 3 sheets. Public records. A suspended sales license in Florida. A small claims judgment in Cook County. An unpaid tax lien that had been released on paper but still showed unpaid interest. I pointed to each line. These are not rumors. They are entries anyone can pull. Clara glanced down. Her eyes moved. Lucas covered the papers with his palm. This is harassment. I kept my tone even. This is context. He took a seat. Legs crossed. Ankle over knee. He did not ask if Clara wanted to sit. She stayed standing until I pulled out a chair. She sat with her body turned half away from me. I set one more item on the table. An email from the title officer confirming my lien and the hold. Without consent. There is no sale. Lucas laughed lightly. You are scared of losing control. You hide behind forms. He turned to Clara. You do not need his permission to breathe. She stared at the email and then at me. Is this true? I nodded. It is true and it is temporary. If you want the sale, I will sign after we talk through the numbers and the plan. My only condition is that it is your choice, not his. He leaned forward. She already chose. I raised a hand a little. Clara, can I ask a few simple questions? She shrugged. I asked how the proceeds would be handled. What bank? What account? What budget? She looked to Lucas. He answered for her. We have a strategy. I asked for details. He said it was private. I said it could not be private if it involved her home and her safety. He called me intrusive. I put 2 photos on the table. Screenshots of his company registration and the storefront address that closed early on Fridays. I circled the suite number that belonged to a mailbox service. He said that was standard practice. I said our hardware store had a real door and a bell that rang when neighbors walked in. Clara's mouth twitched at the word neighbors. He noticed and changed tone. He told me I was small. He told me I did not understand scale. He told me risk was for people with vision. I opened another page. A court docket from Indiana. A woman listed as a plaintiff. Dismissed without prejudice. I said I did not know her story, but I knew the pattern of quick romance and faster money. He reached across the table, grabbed the page, and tore it into 4 neat pieces. Trash. Lies. The sound made Clara flinch. I took a breath. I looked only at my daughter, not at the man beside her, not at the torn paper. Clara, tell me what you want. No names. No pressure. Just you. She looked at her hands. Then at the far wall. I want to be free, she said. But the word wavered. I nodded. Freedom is good. Freedom is safe when it is informed. He rolled his eyes. He told her I would keep her a child forever. He asked if she wanted to live in a small life forever. He promised her vacations and a new car and a company with her name on the door. I put my palms flat on the table so they would stop shaking. Do you know his middle name? She blinked. Do you know the bank he uses? The landlord of his office? The last employer who gave him a W-2? She whispered no. Lucas scoffed. You think data makes love? I said no. I think truth makes commitments that last. He stood and began to pace. He made a call on speaker to a man he called counselor. A voice answered and began to lecture about slander and restraining orders and damages. The voice sounded like it was coming from a car on a freeway. I picked up the phone and ended the call with my fingertip. Sit down, Lucas. The word please was in my throat and did not come out. Clara whispered stop. Her voice shook. Both of you. Lucas softened his tone. Baby, you know me. You know what we have. He touched her shoulder. She closed her eyes like she was asking for a pause. I slid one last page across. An email thread from a landlord to a different tenant. The name was his. The notice was late rent. The balance was bold and red. Clara's eyes opened. She read it twice. He brushed the page away. Old issue. Settled. People fall behind when they invest. I kept my eyes on her. Investment means you put money into something that makes more than it takes. Does this feel like that? She swallowed and looked down. She looked at me. Then at him. He murmured, do not let him poison you. He said it soft and close to her ear. I pushed my chair back by an inch. Clara, I can wait outside while you decide. She shook her head. Stay. Then she turned to Lucas. I need answers. Real answers. He smiled, but his jaw tightened. Of course. Ask. She asked where the sale money would go. He said a joint account. She asked where. He said a boutique bank. She asked for the name. He said it was complicated. She asked for the company address. He said they moved often because of growth. Each answer came slick and thin. I watched her face lose color by degrees. I closed the folder and stood. I do not need to win this room. I only need to be clear. Here is what will happen. I will not sign the release today. I will meet you at the bank of your choosing. We will sit with a manager. We will set rules that guard you. If you look me in the eye and tell me you want this, I will sign. If not, I will not. She nodded slowly. Lucas stood between us like a wall. We are done here. He took her hand. She let him hold it, but she did not squeeze back. We walked out into the winter light. He steered her toward a rideshare idling at the curb. I stood on the sidewalk with my hands in my pockets. She looked back once. That look gave me enough air to make it home. In the kitchen, I pressed the stone against my palm until it hurt. The table had not given me victory. It had given me one thin line of doubt in her eyes. I would have to live on that. The days after that meeting stretched thin, like wires pulled too tight. I worked in the shop, cut rope, mixed paint, handed out receipts. But inside I was waiting for a crack. I felt it coming the way you feel a storm pressing down on your chest before it breaks the sky. On Wednesday, Clara called. Her voice was flat. Lucas says you're making things worse. He says you'll destroy us just to stay in control. I said I only laid out documents. Document, don't lie. She snapped back. People can twist anything. Her words shook, and I heard in them the tug of war she could not admit. That night I sat at the table with Irene's thicker report. More women. More trails. A story that repeated like a cruel song. I circled each date. I made notes. Then I folded the papers into an envelope and sealed it. I did not sleep. Friday evening, I drove past Clara's condo. A strange car was parked out front. A neighbor I knew, Mrs. Lee, waved me over. She whispered, "They fight a lot," loud enough to hear through the walls. He calls her ungrateful. Then he buys her flowers the next day. She shook her head. "Be careful." I thanked her and walked back to my car. My hands shook on the wheel. I wanted to go up, knock on the door, drag Clara out. But I remembered her eyes at the table when she told me to stop. If I forced her, I would lose her completely. The next morning she agreed to meet me at the diner, where we used to celebrate birthdays. She sat across from me, shoulders tight, a bruise faint along her arm. She covered it with her sleeve when she saw me looking. I asked gently, "Did he do that?" She bit her lip. "It was an accident." My chest burned. I slid the envelope across. "Just read it. You don't have to decide today. Just read." She pushed it back. "Lucas says you forged everything. Lucas says you can't stand to see me happy." I whispered. "Clara, does this feel like happiness?" Her eyes filled, but she blinked fast and stood. "I have to go." She left her coffee untouched. By evening I got a letter from an attorney with a name I didn't know. It accused me of harassment, of elder abuse, of manipulation. The grammar was sloppy, the arguments weaker than smoke. But the threat was loud. I called Richard, my old law partner. He read it and laughed once. "This isn't law. It's theater. But theater can scare people who don't know better." I called Clara that night. Straight to voicemail. I left no message. Instead, I sat in the dark, the stone in my palm, and whispered to Maya, "I can't reach her. I can't break through. What do I do?" The silence answered like it always did, by forcing me to breathe until the ache dulled. 2 days later, Clara appeared at the shop. She looked pale, eyes rimmed red. She said Lucas wanted her to cut me out of her life. She said he told her to block my number, to close the door on me for good. Her voice shook. "Dad, I don't know what to believe anymore." I wanted to reach across the counter, hold her hand, promise her I'd fix it all. But she pulled away before I moved. Lucas was outside, leaning on his car, watching. She whispered, "Please stop fighting him. Please. Or I'll have to choose." The bell over the door rang when she left. I stood frozen among nails and screws, knowing I had already lost this round. That night I wrote in the notebook. Today, she asked me to stop. Today, she believed him more than me. Today I felt the floor give way. The call came from a number I did not know. The voice was calm and tired. "My name is Naomi Briggs. I think I loved the same man your daughter loves." I was quiet long enough for her to add the words that mattered. "I am safe now." It took me a year to say that. "If you want proof, I have it." We met at a bakery where Irene liked to sit under the window. Naomi arrived with a folder and a cautious smile. She wore a coat that had seen too many winters and a ring that no longer fit. She opened the folder and slid out pages. Screenshots of messages, transfers to a joint account that was never really joint. A photo of a lease for a downtown apartment where she never had a key. The name on the lease was Lucas's middle name, with a different last name. She tapped the page. He changes names like shirts when the fabric stains. Irene listened with her pen still. She asked simple questions in a slow voice. When did the messages start? When did the money move? When did he begin to say, "You were ungrateful"? Naomi's answers drew a shape I already knew. Fast beginnings. Expensive promises. A slow rewrite of reality, until truth sounded like disloyalty. Naomi slid me a small flash drive. Recorded calls. I made them for myself when I felt crazy. He told me I was the reason his deals fell through. He told me to cut off my mother. He said, "Isolation builds trust." My hands shook as I took the drive. Irene touched Naomi's wrist. "You did the brave thing." Naomi looked down. "I did it too late." Another ally arrived because the city is smaller than you think. A young man sat at our table, hat in his hands. He introduced himself as Evan Cho. He said he did odd jobs for a local lawyer who liked to send loud letters. He said, Lucas paid cash for a template and told the lawyer to make it look frightening. He said he felt sick after he recognized Clara's name in the draft. He looked at his hat. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but the letter you got is smoke. I can testify that Lucas ordered it." Irene asked for dates and receipts. He had both. Mrs. Lee from the condo brought a notebook of her own. Times. Doors slamming. Words through the wall. She did not gossip. She documented. She spoke in a level voice that did not invite argument. He tells her she is ungrateful. He tells her I am watching them. He tells her you will be alone. I wrote each sentence as if I could pull the poison out by writing it down. Owen from City Hall joined us with a file folder that smelled like dust. He placed forms on the table. Lucas's new LLC had no payroll, no sales tax account, no insurance. Owen tapped a line with his finger. The address is a mailbox with a bell that rings for no one. He shook his head. I have seen pop-up shops with more backbone. In the afternoon, we met a banker named Priya Patel, who had handled account alerts for my shop years ago. She walked us through what a safe account looks like. 2 signatures. Hard limits. Automatic notices to both parties. She explained what predatory withdrawals look like. Small tests. Larger pulls. Quiet weekend moves. She drew a graph with a pen on a napkin and slid it to me. If you need to explain this to your daughter, use this picture. People see pictures faster than they hear warnings. By evening, the table looked like a small courtroom. Naomi's texts. Evan's receipts. Owen's filings. Mrs. Lee's notes. Irene's reports. Priya's napkin. It should have felt like victory. It felt like permission to hope. Irene made the plan. Not a dramatic raid. Not a shouting match on a sidewalk. A meeting at the bank with a manager and a clear list of steps. Clara would see where the money would go. She would hear the rules from a voice that was not mine. The manager would explain risk without love getting in the way. If Clara still chose the sale, I would sign. If not, the hold would stand. Irene looked at me. You must be the calmest person in the room. Can you do that? I said I would try. Try is not enough. I said I would be that man. Before we split, Naomi asked to speak to me alone. She took out a small photo from her wallet. A woman older than Naomi. A porch. A summer dress. My mother, she said. I did not call her for months because he made me feel like love was a debt. When I finally called, she had a new laugh. She laughed like someone who had made peace with the door I kept closed. Naomi held the photo to her chest. Do not let your daughter miss that laugh with you. Do not let him take ordinary days. They are the gold. I thanked her and watched her leave. She walked with the careful steps of someone who had learned to test the ground. I thought of Clara on skates. Knees scuffed. Mouth open in a smile. I thought of Maya whispering, "Keep our girl safe." The words rose like a tide. I will. That night I wrote Clara a message and kept it simple. Meet me at Lake Avenue Bank at 10 on Tuesday. A manager will walk us through the account options. If you want the sale after that, I will sign. If you want to wait, I will wait with you. Her reply came 5 minutes later. I will come. She added one more line. Lucas says he should be there. I answered with 3 words. Only if you want. I called Priya and scheduled the meeting. She said she would bring a colleague with quiet authority. She said the glass office had a door that closed and a camera in the corner for records. She said this is routine. I told her it did not feel routine. She said, that is because it is your child. Before sleep, I placed the stone on my palm and looked at the mark it left. I practiced the words I would say. I practiced how to swallow the ones that wanted to leap out first. I prayed without saying the word pray. I asked for clarity. I asked for one clear breath between each sentence. I asked for my daughter to look up and see me as I was. Not a jailer. Not a wall. A father with a hand open. Tuesday morning I woke before dawn. The house felt like it was holding its breath. I shaved slow. Dressed in the shirt Clara bought me one Father's Day. And tucked the stone into my pocket. I locked the shop and drove to the bank with my hands steady on the wheel. The sky was pale gray. The kind that makes you wonder if the sun will rise at all. Clara arrived 10 minutes late. Her coat looked too big for her frame. Lucas was at her side, polished and smiling, shaking the manager's hand like they were old friends. Clara's eyes flicked toward me once. Brief and searching. I nodded. Nothing more. We sat in a glass office with Priya at the head of the table. She greeted Clara warmly, then began to draw simple charts on a legal pad. This is what a safe account looks like. 2 signatures, automatic alerts, independent oversight. Then she drew another line. This is what an unsafe account looks like. Single access, silent withdrawals, no guardrails. Clara leaned forward. Her fingers traced the ink. Lucas shifted in his seat. He smiled and said he had his own arrangements. Offshore accounts with higher returns. Private opportunities that banks cannot match. His voice was smooth, but his knee bounced under the table. Priya stayed calm. She asked for documentation, licenses, proof of client funds, tax returns. Lucas opened his briefcase and laid out glossy brochures. Priya studied them, then pushed them gently back. Marketing is not compliance. Clara's face paled. I placed Naomi's flash drive on the table. Priya plugged it into the bank computer. The screen filled with audio files. Voices filled the room. Lucas's voice telling Naomi to cut off her family. His voice calling her ungrateful. His voice demanding transfers in the middle of the night. Clara gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. Lucas shot up from his chair. Fabricated. Spliced. Lies from bitter women. He turned to Clara. You believe this over me. She shook her head. Tears sliding down. I don't know what to believe. I slid the next folder across. Evan's receipts. Owen's filings. Mrs. Lee's notes. Each page a nail driven into the coffin of his story. Lucas tried to grab them, but Priya stopped him with a firm hand. These are official. She turned to Clara. These are not opinions. These are records, Clara whispered. How could you? Lucas's mask cracked. He slammed his fist on the table. Because you're weak. Because you cling to your father. Because you never would have had anything without me. His voice was too loud, spilling into the lobby. People turned their heads. Priya pressed a button. A security guard appeared at the door. Lucas's face drained of color. He tried to recover, forcing a smile. Baby. I didn't mean that. You know me. Clara stood slowly. She pulled the ring from her finger and placed it on the table. Her voice was steady even through the tears. I know enough. The room fell into silence. Lucas tried one last time. You'll regret this. He reached for her arm. The guard stepped forward. I rose and stepped between them. She's not yours to touch. Lucas's eyes burned, but he knew the fight was over. He let the guard escort him out. Clara collapsed into the chair, sobbing. I moved closer but waited. She lifted her head and whispered, Dad, I'm sorry. I held her hand across the table. No apologies. Just you. Safe. Here. She clung to me, her tears soaking the back of my hand. Priya closed the folder and spoke gently. The sale is cancelled. The account is safe. Clara nodded through her sobs. Thank you. Thank you. We left the bank together. Outside, the sun had finally broken through the gray. Clara looked up at it like she hadn't seen light in months. She whispered, I thought I was free with him. I was just in another cage. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. You are free now. We left the bank and drove without talking. Clara watched the city slide past and held her wrist like she could will the bruise to fade. I kept both hands on the wheel. When we reached my house, she did not move. She stared at the porch where Maya once kept pots of basil. She took one breath and nodded. We went inside. I made tea because tea is something to do when words are not ready. Clara stood by the sink and looked at the photo of the rink. She touched the glass with 2 fingers. I said the words that had lived in my chest for weeks. You do not have to explain anything. You do not have to be brave today. Just be here. She sat at the table with the note that says, Do not forget milk and hug. Her eyes widened. I wrote that. She whispered. You kept it. I said I keep the best parts. I called Irene. She came by with forms and calm. She explained protective orders in words that did not scare. She showed Clara how to block a number and how to save messages. She offered names of counselors who understand how people rebuild. Clara listened and nodded, wiping her face with the back of her wrist. We drove to the station and filed what needed to be filed. A detective with a quiet voice took copies of Naomi's drive and Evan's receipts. He asked careful questions. He said this would take time. He said time is not the enemy if you have a place to rest. Back at the house, we made soup, onions, carrots, a chicken waiting in the freezer for a night that needed warmth. We cooked without talking. We ate. Clara said it tastes like being 5. She laughed, and the sound loosened the knot in my chest. Days found a routine. She stayed in the spare room with my grandmother's quilt. We opened the shop in the mornings and worked side by side. She dusted shelves and remembered how to talk to neighbors about screws and hope. I watched the color return to her face. I watched her hands stop shaking when her phone buzzed and then stop buzzing at all. Naomi came by with flowers and stayed for coffee. She and Clara sat on the porch and spoke quietly. When Naomi left, she pressed a small list into my hand. Sleep near a window. Keep one light on. Carry a small object that reminds you who you are. I held the list and thought of the stone in my pocket and felt less alone. The bank confirmed the sale was cancelled. City Hall flagged filings for review. Naomi's old case found new witnesses. The wheels turned slowly, but they turned in sight of the sun. Clara and I talked as quiet turned to safety. We told stories about Maya. We said the hard parts without looking away. She said, I am sorry for the names I called you. I said, I am sorry for the times I spoke like a judge and not a father. We did not keep score. We let the truth settle like dust and chose to leave it where it fell. One Sunday we went back to the rink. Clara found her skates and laughed at the old nicks on the leather. We laced them up on the same bench that had waited for us. The ice was busy with kids and couples, and one brave woman moving alone. Clara stepped onto the surface and wobbled. I reached out, not to hold her steady, but to let her know I was close. She made one careful circle, Then another. The cold stung our faces. Spring moved over the city. The shop had a line on Saturdays again. Clara began to teach a class at the rec center for teens who wanted to learn handiwork. She showed them how to patch a wall and hang a shelf. She told them that learning to fix a thing changes the way you see yourself. One evening, we walked to the hill above the river with 2 lilies in hand. We stood by the small plaque with Maya's name and spoke into the wind. Clara whispered, "Thank you for the hard warnings, and thank you for not leaving." I said, "I wish you were here to see how strong she is." The river sounded less like ending and more like a road. The legal news came like slow rain. An arrest in another county. A warrant at an office with no real door. Voices on a recorded line played in a room with a flag. We stayed home and let the people whose job it was do their job. On the first warm night of June, we ate outside under a string of lights. Clara told me she had found the river stone. It was in the pocket of the coat she had stopped wearing. She set it on the table next to mine. 2 small pieces of weight. 2 reminders that we carry what we choose. She said, "I want to start again. Not the life from before or the life that almost was. A new one, with room to make mistakes and ask for help." I said, "I am here for all of it." She reached across the table and took my hands. Her eyes were clear. Somewhere a radio played a song I could not name. Later, after she went to bed, I stood by the sink and touched the old note on the freezer. "Do not forget milk and hug." I took a pen and added 1 word in the corner. "Today." Then I placed the stone beside it and turned off the kitchen light. The house did not feel empty anymore. It felt lived in. It felt like a promise kept. I opened the notebook that had started with 1 sentence. "I will not disappear." I wrote the next line very slowly so I would hear it in my head as I wrote it. She did not either.